Captain, enemy ships decloaking off of port bow.
They're charging weapons.
Shields up. Red alert.
They're firing!
Containment failure detected. Warp core breach imminent.
Welcome to Warp Core Breach, episode 18. On this episode, Nick and David go hypothetical with 2.0. The Faction Report analyzes Borg Weaponry. Natasha dotes on Kuruk and advises against kidnapping. Nick's Intermix hands out auxiliary power tokens like they were candy. Griffin takes us to Chintaka, and then we head out to the Gamma Quadrant to discuss our top Dominion ships.
Warning. Warp core breach detected.
I'm David Montgomery, and here's my co-host, the Bohica to my Ducat.
Hit, 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 hit. I'm Nick Norris. Howdy, everyone.
And see, it's Bohica and Ducat because they're best friends. You know, battle stations, make more hits.
You've got a friend in me.
You've
Toy Story?
got a friend in me. Okay, we don't want to get sued. Or have everybody stop listening right now.
Yeah, if we're under 30 seconds and it's not an actual clip, we should be good.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, we're talking Dominion. Those two are the good staples of any Dominion fleet, so...
Yo.
I think it works. So, you got anything new going on with you in the Star Trek world, Nick?
Been having some low-key games with some friends the past couple weeks. Had an interesting Delta Flyer on Delta Flyer game with my buddy Steven. That was interesting. We basically unlocked it. We said, whatever you can fit on this thing, however you can get slots, just load it up. Points don't matter. Just max it out. And then we went head-to-head. It was a lot of fun. Like, just the Delta Flyers, no support ships or anything. They just happened to just come across each other, some alternate rift thing, and it's like, face off. It was good fun.
Do I even want to know how many points you got that up to?
Well, it was easily close to about 92, 93.
Oy.
Yeah, I could have put it higher, but...
Let me guess, that was like 9 shields?
Darn near. Well, the thing is, I didn't even think of it originally on my own, but Steven had added on the Borg Alliance and Borg Blade of Hull, so that jacked up the points real quick and added an extra slot, right?
Yeah.
So originally my build was about 77 to 82 in that range, and then in our second run, because we did it twice, second run I added on the Blade of Hull and Borg Alliance and that, dropping stalking mode, because it was just that one extra die. So it worked out rather well and had a lot of fun.
Ooh, that gave me a thought about how to improve the Equinox build.
Oh.
Granted, you're going to run out of points very quickly, but...
Oh, yeah. When you're just playing an open exhibition game, you can do whatever you like, but when you're building for a tournament, you got a little bit more boundaries to work with there.
Yeah, I don't know that 18 points or so is actually worth it. Plus eating a talent slot.
True. But, you know, if you're running something like Carr or Kirk and you get the 2 slots, then you're not hurting too badly.
Yeah, if I'm running Kirk, I think I'd rather bury 2 copies of Cheat Death.
But don't forget, if you're running something like Fleet Captain, you get the extra slot as well. You don't have to take it as a free upgrade.
True. So, yeah, as for me, it's been kind of slow. I've been playing a lot of board games lately. Oh, woe is me playing board games instead of Attack Wing.
Likewise.
Yeah, my Pandemic Legacy campaign is completed July? August? One of the 2 months. If you're at all interested in co-op games and kind of a campaign game, check out Pandemic Legacy. I can't give you any specifics because of spoilers, but it is so interesting and so challenging, and Natasha, myself, and 2 of our friends just like get at each other's throats, and it's like, no, we have to do this, and if we don't do this, the world is going to die. And it's great fun. It's those kind of memories that you make, and of course we make those memories in Star Trek games. And
of course.
it's providing an atmosphere where we're having fun, we're kicking back, and
letting loose.
Yeah. Most of our games get played at like 2 a.m. because it's after everybody else leaves from game night and we're the last four. So it's like, yeah, we're going to play Pandemic now. And people just look at us and they're like, really? You're staying here? At one point, we started the first round at like 1:30 and we lost. So we played the second game in the month and we didn't finish until like 5:30.
Oh, yeah. I know what that's like.
Oh, that was rough. Now, all of that being said, I did release the Zindus preview, the Temporal Cold War Grand Prize review, put up a thank you video to Dawn for the repainted ships. So if you're interested at all in those, they're on the Shipyard Facebook page and the YouTube channel. So that's all out there for people to look at.
Yeah, and in the vein of the co-op games, one I've been playing a lot recently with some buddies is the Shadowrun Crossfire. It's kind of a card game, but it's a campaign, and it really encourages the cooperative theme where you can cross over, you can help your teammates and square off against bad guys and that. And it's really cool because it's got magic and tech and weapons and all that sort of thing. It's got the cool variety, and similar vein to what you've been doing on your game nights. Like, we start late and we just play until the wee hours if we need to, and just have a great time.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Shadowrun.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that it's far too easy to spend all of your time helping out your compatriots, and then it gets to your turn and you're like, oh, I have nothing. Guys, help!
Exactly. Well, with my group, we actually coordinate our efforts. So we actually think that, okay, well, if I help you with this and this, are you able to help with this? And, okay, you can do this, and then we can do that for you, and then this cascades into that. So sometimes we take like 10-15 minutes to plan the next round. It's quite cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that long, but yeah.
And sometimes that's just what you have to do, right? That's the point of teamwork. And I'd love to see Attack Wing get some teamwork integrated into it.
Exactly what I was going to lead into. And over the past year and change, I've seen a number of different custom games and scenarios that people have been playing and posting on Facebook and other groups there, showing how they would get together multiple players playing on one side against one or more players on the other side. Sometimes it's a swarm against Borg, sometimes it's one faction versus another faction, all sorts of different cool creative concepts, some of them involving wormholes and planets and time travel and all sorts of cool things. And that is a nice little add-on that I think Attack Wing would greatly benefit from. Usually it's just one-on-one. Joust, kill, and the missions that come with the ships add a great little bit of flavor, and unfortunately they don't get as much attention as I would like. So I'm really appreciating all the people that have been contributing and talking about the missions to help build them up and raise awareness. I think we need to take it a step further and actually get kind of a multiplayer concept going.
Yeah, well, and to further think about that, what's the one mission that most people point to and say, try this out with new players? It's Destroy the Scimitar.
Exactly.
3-on-1, where the one is the game, really.
Yeah, you're playing against an NPC, non-player character.
Which is great. They don't have to do anything. So you get yourself and 2 new players, or you, a buddy, who both know the game, and 1 new person. And you have to coordinate your efforts.
Especially when that scimitar is just going willy-nilly all over the board. You never know which way it's going to go. Well, there it was.
Yeah. And it's like, it's one of the missions. I actually haven't played it. I've played some other ones. But it just looks super... The reason is I've never had 3 people around to really try out the mission. And it's one that I've wanted to have 3 people, not 1 person playing 2 ships.
Yeah, well, you can do it with 2 players, too. It works that way.
Yeah. I just... There's other good missions for 2 players, so I was just like, let's try one of these. I know these are good ones, so... it works. But I'd love to do, like, 2v1 type things, and
Mm-hmm.
those will never work in an OP, or it takes a lot of creative work to make them work, and I don't know that it'll happen, but this game is far more than organized play.
Yeah, exactly.
And it has to be in order for it to continue going.
Yeah, organized play is kind of like a perk system. It's like if you want to get a little bit more out of the game as far as tangibles, this is a way you can get resources and ships or cards and whatnot. But the game itself has to first and foremost be a casual, fun thing that you can pick up and play at home with your family or with friends elsewhere and do what you want with it.
Yeah, it's really the reason I love watching the Wandering Inn campaign, is watching them do random stuff. They just finished season 2 and now they're doing season 2.5, which is what happened from a different perspective.
Ooh, I like it.
They had a Khan-like character who was conducting missions, but their two main characters knew nothing about it. And so there were events that were happening to them that they didn't know about or understand why they were going on.
A different layer.
Yeah, but in the meantime, these events, these games were being played, decisions were being made by another person. And now we as the audience are just learning about what's happening.
Oh, nice. That's forethought.
Yeah, we're getting all this behind the scenes stuff. And I mean, I'm personally invested. I play an admiral in their campaign, so I dole out some orders here and there. But I even had a gag order put on me because communications got jammed to my starbase. It was crazy. I didn't know what was going on, and the way filming happened, there were delays between filming, editing, and putting it online, and then a bunch of episodes got dropped all at once, and so I couldn't react, which made it more interesting. I couldn't give them new orders, which is kind of like real Star Trek life. The captains just had to make decisions on their own.
It reminds me of that sequence in The Martian where basically, spoiler alert, folks, when Watney was launching from Mars to meet up with the Ares, and being so far from Earth, all they could do at Earth was just sit back and listen. If they actually had some advice to offer if anything went wrong, by the time the advice arrived there, it would have been long over.
It does make it really interesting. And campaigns can be a really interesting thing. And it doesn't even matter if you're any good at developing a story. Make it like a 3-episode thing or a 3-part game where you're like fighting a bigger and bigger battle. Yeah,
like just steps from one step to the next, different achievements.
Yeah, and like you're growing a fleet or something. Like it doesn't have to be a huge like 18 to 24 episode arc like the Wandering Inn does. It can be just a little small story that you want to tell, and your group can go from there, or just like you and a couple of friends, and you'd be amazed at what that can do for the health of a game, because it can get people invested in what you're doing. And it shows that there's life to this game beyond competitive. What a lot of people will never fully understand from me is I was almost out of this game completely, and the Wandering Inn saved me.
Really?
They pulled me back in because they showed me that this game had more to it than the hyper competitive.
Thanks, guys.
And I mean, part of that was my own perspective, but it took somebody else showing me that.
You had to have it turned on its ear and show you the other side.
Yeah, and it's not...
Yeah, it's not like it's this other side of a coin. It's like the other side of a multifaceted sphere of a sort. There's so many different perspectives with so many different flavors and directions you can go.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that to be dramatic or anything. I'm not trying to say, oh, woe is me, because I love this game. I was just in burnout. I was in the midst of my local store having like 3 people show up to play events, and that's just not fun. They're great people. It's just not fun to have 3 people. You just want balance. You want interesting things to have to plan against and realize that you can't plan for everything. And this was pre-Borg rule change and all of that. And so the game was getting a little stale.
Mm-hmm.
And it was feeling like, well, this isn't better than what we have, so why bother?
Exactly. Like, quite often when I play with Michelle and Clay, we play one-on-one, and it's really not fair given my experience. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to have 2-on-1, where both of them are squaring off against me.
Yeah.
So that'll give me more of a challenge and give them a better chance.
Yeah, and even if you do something like 150 for you versus 80 and 80 for them.
Or even 100 each, or whatever that works, yeah.
Whatever it ends up being, you can give them a tiny bit of an advantage because they have to coordinate, whereas you know everything that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Plus, they're still learning the cards, and I've got half them memorized, right?
Yeah.
And the other half are on the tip of the tongue, ready to roll.
Hey, you and me both.
We gotta do our jobs, right?
Much to Natasha's chagrin.
Sha, grin.
But yeah, another week of planning for me. I've got Temporal Cold War 1 this Saturday, so
nice.
By the time most of you are listening to this, I will be playing, and yeah, for sure enjoying myself. Hopefully emerging victoriously, but we're planning on filming the games, and I should have those up hopefully next week.
Nice.
On that note, no Warp Core Breach next week. We're taking Thanksgiving week off, at least in America, Thanksgiving week.
We had ours last month.
Yes, but we're taking the week off. Give me a chance to edit a lot of stuff and kind of catch up and breathe a little bit.
Play catch up, pass the mustard.
Yes. Also to give our contributors a chance to enjoy family time. So
of course. We don't want to work you like dogs until we're actually paying you. Oh, wait, we're not paying you.
But yeah, and also I've got a couple of new contributors in the works and working stuff out with them. So this gives them a chance to kind of catch up and then get into the flow of things.
Preemptive welcome to you.
Yes. Not that December is going to be a flow month, but we'll figure stuff out. We'll have at least one new episode in December, hopefully 2. We'll keep you updated as we know more.
Yeah, and if need be, we can always slap together some quick and short little shows if worthy news comes up that we need to share with you folks.
So if you see a 10-minute episode, you know that the news happened. But yeah, I think on that note, we should roll into our main topic.
Our main topic today, we're going to be talking about the possibility of a non-faction. You know, cards that fit into a category that don't require a faction such that they can actually be played in whatever faction you're playing without penalty, without worrying about purity. And my thinking on that are cards like Tech, Weapons, and Crew that just don't quite fit into any one group, and you don't need to worry about all that. Your supernumeraries, your gray area, the people that float around.
So, for example, a card like the Kazon Torpedo that gives you 360 degrees of coverage, except it's not a Kazon upgrade, it's a universal upgrade that can go on any ship for any faction, and you pay the exact same point no matter what.
Exactly.
You could also have a card like Systems Upgrade from the Federation Hood Pack, except that would give any ship an extra shield.
Mm-hmm.
And these would maybe go in some kind of limitation where ships could only take one of them.
Unique one per ship, not unique per fleet.
Right. And maybe we'd put some kind of silver icon on them like they did in the card game that just designates them as limit one per ship.
Limited use, yeah.
But it wouldn't even necessarily be like limit of one system upgrade. It would be like, of this pool of upgrades, you could only have one thing. That would be an option.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even worked those specifics out, but...
Right, because a number of the cards that we've already got in this vein have been exclusively released for the Federation. things like the tactical station, navigational station, systems upgrades, things like that. Those are the things that really, given their generic nature in concept, should be able to apply to anybody.
You would
It's
think.
it's kind of like the advanced phaser for that came with the Terex that boosted the Dare decks. Well, for everybody that plays Purity, it's almost like thumbing your nose at them. Or it's like, okay, well, we're going to give you what you've all been waiting for, but you can't use it.
And even for those who play Unlimited, it costs more points, so it's still not an ideal fix.
Yeah, it should have said that it ignores faction penalty when played on a Romulan Dare decks or something to that effect. So at least it handles the gray area.
Yeah. And I mean, TOs could certainly house rule that, but you do not want a list of house rules 4 pages long.
Exactly. As it is, there's about a page worth on my Facebook page for our group. And I imagine that given the months that have gone by, and if something's not used commonly, most of my players have probably forgotten half of them.
You would think.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of human nature. But
use it or lose it.
yeah, these are things that a universal upgrade, even like Orion Helmsman, is a card that, yes, we saw it on the ISS Avenger in Enterprise, but it's not like an Orion Helmsman is unique to the mirror universe.
Mm-hmm.
They could easily be independent. They could easily be contracted out to the Ferengi, the Vulcans, the Federation.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the main flagships or the main ships of the fleet, but, you know, escort ships, stuff like that.
Andorian Helmsman. Andorians are a Federation race or Starfleet race.
Yeah. Those kinds of things just should be more applicable.
Mm-hmm. Like, I could even see some cards that would work with all factions except certain ones. Like, if you've got some sort of devious character, they likely won't work for Federation and Klingon, so they don't work with the Honor Klingons and the Noble Federation, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And by that logic, the Vulcans.
Of course. But I still, in my mind, the Vulcans are part of the Federation, so that's another thing that I have trouble getting over.
Right.
So one of my house rules, when not playing era specific, the Vulcans count as Federation, and all upgrades that cite Vulcan or Federation work on Federation or Vulcan, and vice versa.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. And these aren't things that are trying to make it more complicated. In fact, these are things that are trying to make the game simpler.
Mm-hmm. And more flavorful and more thematic.
Yeah, having a pile of upgrade cards that can literally go on any ship that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Just makes it easier. I mean, how cool would it be to have a captain like the Alpha Hirogen, the one that lets you convert a blank into a hit, except it goes for any faction you want.
Right, like a generic non-game breaking ability that everybody should have the right to use. Yeah.
Or even a captain that says, as an action, place battle station beside your ship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that gives every faction access to battle station. Maybe it has 2 costs, like it's a 3-point captain if your ship has battle stations, and then it becomes a free action. And then it's like a 5-point cost if your ship doesn't have battle stations. I don't know.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
This is right off the top of my head, but we could easily have 2 different costs for that.
Mm-hmm. It could be either on the flip side of the card or just write it into the text.
Sure. They've done double-sided cards. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
That's actually better than having a slash cost. You just have a double-sided card.
Right.
That even has interesting uses with shuttlecraft.
Indeed.
You can put it on a shuttle that has battle stations and then transfer it to a ship that doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
More point saving. So, you know, these are just little things that would be intriguing. And another thing that Nick and I have been talking about, an independent Reliant.
Dual faction.
Yeah, either dual faction or a new
Alternate.
skin. Yeah.
Right. Like the CCG, whenever they had a ship like that, they would have either a one or the other, or they would have one that was both, depending on the situation or how they want it played. Now, in this case of the USS Reliant, it doesn't really make sense that it would be both. It was an either-or situation. It was either under Captain Terrell or under Khan. So in this case, it would be great to have a separate version of the Reliant, not unlike the Deep Space Nine Terrak Nor concept, where you get a completely different card for the exact same ship model.
Mm-hmm. And one could then argue and say, oh, well, then you need a different base plate. And
that's not too difficult. That's not out of the realm of reason.
No, it's not. And I could see them doing something like that. It would not be hard. And we do have a...
Yeah, there's a Wrath of Khan episode OP tournament coming up.
Yes. So that could easily be an add-on or the entire pack.
Absolutely.
Who knows what we'll actually get there.
As we're starting to see, the grand prize ships are starting to end up not being ships at all. They're card packs. Like, it's entirely reasonable that one day, like I've spoken in early shows, that have expansion packs or something that's just cards. You can have, like, some cardboard in there to give yourself an alternate base plate, maybe even an alternate dial in some extreme circumstances. But essentially just cards and maybe a base plate, just to add some extra flavor to your existing ships. It saves money for you, it saves money for WizKids, and everybody's happy because they get more of what they want.
Yeah, that is certainly a possibility, and I'm not going to say anything more.
Well, granted, we might want more Vorchas or Galaxy classes or things like that from the model point of view, but, when it comes to the Klingon Bird of Prey or Dodera decks, we don't really need another model, so that might be a thought for WizKids.
Yep. So, and we could spend a lot of time talking about wording and other things that we'd want changed in a 2.0. And I guess maybe it's more like we're saying, hey, 1.5, give us an evolution of the system.
Exactly, an expansion to the existing meta.
Because I think it's safe to say we're kind of on like 1.2 right now. We had 1.0, then we got like the May ruling, so that became 1.1. We got the Borg rule change, that's now 1.2.
And then we've got the ongoing Worf factor, and that's kind of like the 1.3, because it's an evolving deal there.
Sure. And one day when I get my rules council together, that'll be 1.4. More news on that soon, I hope.
Since we've covered the non-faction topic, if any of you have any ideas on how to flesh this out or give it some new life, let us know. Tell us what you think. We really like to hear from you, so bring out the word.
Yeah, I think at some point we'll try to work up some of those customs and get them in the Facebook group. When we have more time.
Maybe over Christmas.
Quite possibly.
Then again, I work in retail, so not on the sales floor, folks.
I think our next big project is getting the Warp Core Breach custom set put together. That'll be fun for people to have. TBA,
my friends, TBA. To be announced.
But yeah, I think we wanted to keep our main topic a little shorter today because, if you listened to last week, you know that we can talk and talk and talk.
And speaking of which, we're rambling, so maybe we should throw it to one of our contributors.
Good evening, and welcome to the Faction Report. The segment that brings you the inside scoop on all the factions. We'll show you how they really work, expose their weaknesses, find innovative combinations, and help you make them work better. And now here's your host, the man who is not Picard, David Walton.
Hi everyone. Last time I spoke about the Borg and how the Borg had access to some of the best ganking upgrades in the game. One of the things that the Borg also have access to, which is amongst the best in the game, are their weapon upgrades. Weapon upgrades often much maligned, not used a great deal, but the Borg have access to some of the best. In fact, they have access to the single best weapon upgrade in the form of magnetometric guided charges. Magnetometric guided charges, range 1 to 3, disable to fire. You get to convert a battle station's result into a crit, which is really nice. They're only firepower 3, which for the Borg is a bit of a step down from their firepower 6 primary weapons, but the massive advantage with them is that your opponent cannot roll defense dice against them. On the Scout Cube, at least the name Scout Cubes, there are 2 of them, this is a must-take weapon. It's the same as your primary weapon value normally, gives you access to range 3. It's just brilliant. I would even advise taking this on Spheres and Diamonds too, particularly with the Queen Vessel Prime, because the Queen Vessel Prime can spend that scan token to get an extra dice out of this. So, Magnetometric Guided Charges, the first of the Borg's really nice weapons upgrades. The second one that I'd like to talk about is Proton Beam. Now, obviously Borg don't really have much trouble producing attacks that give you quite a lot of dice, but with the advent of a lot of ships that are allowing you to add extra shields to your ship, stuff like systems upgrade and unimatrix shielding and upgrades like that add extra shields to your ship, the formerly ships that you wouldn't see run because they had low hull and shield combinations are starting to get run more. Certainly I'm looking into running the Defiant a lot more than I used to, simply because the Defiant now has access to all of those extra shields. That means nothing if you're going straight through those shields straight to hull, and that's one of the reasons I think Proton Beam, which ignores shields, is a particularly good choice for the Borg. Another upgrade that the Borg have access to, which helps them solve the range 3 problem that they've had and also helps to deal with fighters quite well, is Full Assault. Full Assault is 6 attack dice, range 1 to 3. You have to split it between 2 or 3 targets. Now, if you're facing against a swarm of fighters, only having a couple of dice against each fighter squadron is not going to be that big of a deal, simply because you can only remove 1 token anyway. This gets even better when you put it on a tactical cube, because it goes up to 9 dice, meaning that you could potentially split it between 3 different targets and have 3 dice against each of them. It's a great counter to fighters. Another interesting weapons upgrade that the Borg have, and one that I don't think I've ever seen use, is Biogenic Charge. This came with the Assimilation Target Prime Grand Prize, so I can understand that not a lot of people will have it. It's quite expensive at 8 points. You only get 7 attack dice with it. But what it does that I think is quite nice, and one of the reasons I really enjoy using the Thaleron weapon, is for each of the hits you flicked on a target's hull, they lose 1 of their crew. This is really good when you're trying to get rid of particular crew that are causing you particular difficulties, like Drex and Nagaran, or Behika, or Hudriker. Lots of opportunity for you to get rid of those really annoying crew members. A card that used to see a lot of play, that's gone out of fashion a bit, but still has some utility, at least in my mind, are Borg Missiles. Borg Missiles, 4 attack dice, range 1 to 2. The reason they went out of play is they only add 1 auxiliary power token when they're fired, rather than the potentially 4 that they used to do. But I still think having the ability to drop an auxiliary power token on an opponent's ship is quite nice. Maybe not 6 points of quite nice, but something that's worth looking out, maybe for in combination with something like Romulan, Fleet Captain, or Sakona if you are playing in mixed play. The last of the Borg weapon upgrades that I'm going to talk about is perhaps the most weird, and that is multi-kinetic neutronic mines. Multi-kinetic neutronic mines are 10 points, and that's quite expensive. They do allow you to put a minefield down, and that minefield potentially covers range 1 to 3, but only when an opponent goes over the mine token itself. So you have to place it well, and it works best against fleets that are in swarms or have to fly in formation because they're relying on upgrades like Denatra or Gowron to boost their attack, or in fact boost their defense. So, multi-kinetic neutronic mines are a great way of controlling board space, but they have to be used well. I suppose the thing about all of the Borg weapons together is that they tend to be quite expensive for what they do. And being as they are quite expensive, and Borg have great primary firepower anyway, they don't see as much use as they could do. I'm still a big fan though, and I think it's worth trying out, particularly in the post-Borg nerf world, worth trying out what these weapons can do to give yourself that little edge to try and make the Borg playable, competitive again. Anyway, It's been nice talking to you again about the Borg, and next week we'll have a look at something slightly different. Regardless, I'm still not Picard.
And here's Natasha with Dude, It's Just a Game. A perspective on Star Trek Attack Wing from someone who isn't completely obsessed.
Hey everyone, I'm back, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a couple of cards from the booster packs.
You're going to be talking about cards? I thought this was the thing we did together.
Oh, that's David. David's here too. I guess we're gonna talk about it. AKA me.
I mean, okay, if you want to do this all by yourself, go ahead. I'll go make myself a sandwich.
You're very dramatic, dear. So we are gonna talk about one good card and one less useful in a booster scenario card. There. Is that nice enough for you?
It's just a bad card.
Shh. Today we're going to talk about a card from the IKS Barak or something like that. I don't speak Klingon, sorry.
I'm nerdy, but I don't either. So, sorry.
I know Kapla. Does that count?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're going to talk about Kuruk or Kurak, something like that.
According to Memory Alpha, it's the Boo Rock.
Oh, that's great. Anyways, so the crew, Kuruk, so what she says is when defending during the deal damage step, you may discard this card to disable up to 2 of your shield tokens instead of losing them. So I really like that concept. It's a 3-point card, and it's a discard, so it's not super expensive for a discard, but it essentially adds 2 to your durability.
As long as you live through the round.
Well, that's true. And as long as you're not cloaked, which is kind of a problem on a Klingon ship. You kind of want to be cloaked.
Except for the Burak herself, that is a ship that you actually don't want to be cloaked because of the named ability, but every other Klingon ship, I'm with you.
Whatever. So if you get wiped out by, say, the bioship, obviously it's not so useful.
Or the Vulcans.
Yeah, anyways. So about that. That being said, though, it can be extremely useful, especially in the terms of a reinforcement booster. So definitely take that if you pull the Baruch, something. Okay, so moving on. The other card that I'd like to kind of talk about today comes on the Ferengi Nunx Marauder. Honestly, Ferengi didn't do so hot in our little tournament. So there's a couple of cards I could talk about, but I think we'll just focus on Kidnap.
Yeah, this is probably a card that isn't very useful in a tournament as a booster or outside of it.
Right, so you have to disable all of your shields to target a ship and either steal or discard a crew from that ship, but only if they have no active shields, and it's a discard, so it's a one-time use. And honestly, for me to rely on my opponent having decent crew seems a little off.
Well, there are a lot of good crew, but the catch is getting them to the point where they have no shields.
Right, and a crew that I would want to steal that they haven't somehow used or discarded, or by that point, they're almost dead, practically, so.
Yeah, the other thing is you can only take this card for a Ferengi captain on a Ferengi ship. So it's not like most other talents where you can move it around, put it on whatever you want, and just pay the extra points. No, here you are limited to Ferengi.
And I mean, I get that. Ferengi doesn't get a lot of love, so sure. And the idea of kidnapping a crew member sounds really nice. It's just extremely situational. And for you to take 5 points for a card that you may never have the option to use, it's a little much for me.
Well, that's the thing. If this was a card that costs you 3 points instead of 5, 2 points, I think it would be more on the playable side. But when you just make a card 5 points because it fits the cost template in a booster, it doesn't make it very good outside of it.
Yeah, and I'm not even, I don't remember, did we even fly Kidnap?
You flew it against the Bajoran because you knew that you had a chance to steal my crew because I was starting with no shields, but I didn't fly it against the bioship because you had no crew.
Right, well, because bioship is awesome. In terms of the Ferengi ship, honestly, I'm sorry if you pull it, but don't take Kidnap. It's not going to help. It's really not. So yeah, there's a couple more cards to kind of think about. If you have different opinions or you think you could make Kidnap playable, definitely let us know. Send a Facebook message or something. But yeah, so I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week with a couple more cards. But until then, remember,
dude,
it's just a game.
Welcome to the next edition of Nick's Intermix, where I look at card interactions to see which ones fizzle, which ones sizzle, which ones are stable, and which ones are volatile. In the chamber this week, Aux tokens for everybody! So, if your opponent is dependent on their actions to make their fleet work, you may want to try this tactic. Why not start handing out a whole bunch of auxiliary power tokens so they can't do anything? You know, it's not like everybody is flying the original Tiny Prize. Or Vulcans, for that matter. Well, let's start with the Bioship Alpha, which states, when you attack with your primary weapon, if you inflict at least 3 damage, place an auxiliary power token beside the target ship. Well, why don't we guarantee that we get that 3 damage through? How do we do that? With resistance is futile. Now you're saying, Borg talent on a bioship. Interesting. Well, run with it. Okay, during the modify attack dice step of the combat phase, you may discard this card and spend up to 3 of your drone tokens to select a number of your attack dice equal to the number of drone tokens you spent with this card. These dice cannot be cancelled during the compare results step of the combat phase. So, made simple, you spend up to 3 of your drone tokens, you lock down 3 of your attack dice. So as long as you roll at least 3 hits or crits, you can lock those in so they cannot be defended. So you cannot cancel them with evade dice, evade tokens, or other means. The only way is to cancel the attack as a whole. Hopefully that doesn't happen. So, how do we get resistance is futile? Well, we could play it simple and just throw on a Borg Queen or some other Borg Captain. Or we can make things a little more interesting, and this would break it out of the suggested 50-point limit. But we could throw Car on there, which will give you some nice modifications, possibly an extra attack die, and other goodies. And how do we get that to work with Car? Well, he's got 2 talent slots, so we're going to throw Borg Alliance on there. And that not only gives you a Borg upgrade slot if you want to take advantage of that, but it gives you the 4 drone tokens that you're going to need 3 of those in order to use resistance is futile. Because you want to get those 3 locked down to get that Aux token in. And if you happen to roll 4, great. There's step 1. Step 2, you can throw on things like Positron Beam, which came from the USS Excelsior. During the planning phase, you may discard this upgrade to target a ship at range 1 of your ship. That ship immediately receives an auxiliary power token. Now, these are non-unique tech, and you can throw as many of these on as you want, as long as you own that many. The caveat, of course, is you can't release as many as you want per turn. Given the rules, you'd only be able to use that exact ability once per round. So next time you can do it, and next time you can do it, and next time you can do it, as long as you have more of them. And on the bioship, you get a fair bit of tech slots, so you got that covered. Next, you got Tractor Beam. Target a ship at range 1 and roll 2 attack dice. For every hit or crit result, place an auxiliary power token beside the target ship. There are a few upgrades called Tractor Beam which have different effects. I am, of course, speaking of the Mirror Universe version in this case. Still on the mirror track, we have the Crew Brunt. At the start of the end phase, you may discard this card to target an enemy ship at range 1 to 3. Place an auxiliary power token beside the target ship. Nice. 1 more Aux token to throw out. Now you don't have to load up the bioship with these cards, you can put them on another ship. The Kazon have some interesting toys in this vein, so why not build with the Relora Sankur? Now it's a 4153, 180 degree forward arc, so it's got some good direction there, some good power. The movement is reasonable, and it can take a lot of hits. So, let's throw on Arsenal to add some weapon slots, some variable yield charges, And they're going to be handy because they buff up the photonic charges, and that's what we're going for here. There's a few different options for photonic charges. There's a range 1 4 attack die, range 1 to 2 3 attack die. And each of those will place an auxiliary power token if there's at least one uncancelled hit or crit. Now, the range 1 4 attack is limited to the Predator class ships, or you're going to have to pay an extra penalty, so that's one reason why we're taking the Relora Sancor. It is indeed a Predator class, and it's one of the more durable and handy versions, given that you get a +1 attack die when doing a green maneuver, so it's just an added bonus. There you have it, quick and dirty. A number of interesting ways to hand out auxiliary power tokens and deny your enemy their precious action economy. This has been another Nick's Intermix. The chamber is now empty.
Hi, I'm Dave Griffin. Today we're going to discuss the mission, The First Battle of Chintoka. It came with the 5th Wing patrol ship, so it's kind of an old mission, and it recreates DS9's Tears of the Prophet episode. The forces are Dominion, 150 points versus Federation 150 points, but the Dominion are a lot more specified. The Dominion has 75 points of orbital weapons platforms and 75 points of ships, which must include at least one Dominion attack ship with one suicide upgrade. That's pretty restrictive, as we'll find out when we get to the objectives. There's a planet in the center of the board, standard 3x3 board, with 4 orbital weapons platforms at north, south, west, and east at 4 inches from the planet. The orbital weapons platforms are 4026s, no maneuvers and no actions apparently, 360 fire, range 1 to 2, captain skill 1. But there are some problems. The problems are that when an orbital weapons platform is destroyed, all others lose 1 primary weapon value and 1 shield. Also, the orbital weapons platforms count as obstacles, basically. There are some slight rules differences, but that's pretty much the case. Now, objectives. The Dominion's objectives are twofold. They can either destroy all the Federation ships, or they can make 1 successful suicide attack versus at least 1 Federation ship doing at least 1 damage. It doesn't say to hull, so presumably a shield or an armor damage is also okay. On the Federation side, the Federation wins by destroying all the orbital weapons platform. Now, tactics on the Dominion side, because the orbital weapons platforms are pretty useless, as I'll discuss, they're not going to destroy the Federation ships. So really the only way they can win this scenario is to conduct a suicide attack. If they take only a single bug, it's relatively easy for the Federation side to destroy the bug before it can attack. Now, it might still get its attack off, but they're at least making the Federation's job easier if there's only 1 ship that can win the game. So the presumption is the Dominion player should have 2 bugs, each with a suicide upgrade. Also, if you don't keep the bugs together, it seems like it's more likely for them to be destroyed in detail, so I think keeping them together might be a good idea. Also, having low captain skill in this case, I think is a good idea because it allows you to move first. And I think that's important because you can't do a suicide attack if you have no action. So if they manage to block you, you can't do it. So that seems to have the best possibility of setting up the suicide attack. And since the bugs are going to be shot at, you want to make them as defensive as you can based on the points you have and the upgrades that are available, especially if you're going to go Dominion Pure. On the Federation side, the most important priority is to kill the bugs. Now, obviously, you're not going to win by killing the bugs, but if the bugs get a single attack on a Federation ship, you lose. So your first priority has to be shooting at the bugs, and especially if they look like they might be able to reach your ship in close to 1 maneuver. Your second priority is to kill the platforms. I would try to move unpredictably to try to make the bugs setting up a suicide attack more difficult. Maneuver upgrades like Forest or Indy Fed Fleet Captain might be good for keeping your options open. This is definitely a game of maneuver. if the Dominion player and the Federation player both understand the scenario, the Dominion player is going to be using his bugs to try to maneuver into position in such a way as to not expose them to a lot of fire before the big event, and to put them in position where they can get to at least one of the Federation ships and then conduct the attack. Depending on how good each of those players is at maneuvering their ships, either side can really win. However, I think the scenario has some flaws. First off, like I said, the platforms are useless. 4026 sounds good, except that one of the orbital weapons platform is right by the Federation's entrance area. So the odds against them not destroying that right off the bat are pretty much, zero. They're going to destroy that platform immediately, which means that all your other platforms become 3026s. Plus, the orbital weapons platform have no actions, which means they have no quality, which means 4 dice is effectively 2 hits, and you can shoot at the Federation all day, and it's going to take you an awful long time to destroy even one ship. What that means is if you want the orbital weapon platforms to be a threat, at absolute minimum, I think you want to not play the rule where when an orbital weapons platform is destroyed, you reduce the rest of their primary weapon values. You can reduce them by shield, but if you reduce their primary weapon values, you might as well not have weapons at all. Secondly, I would allow the orbital weapon platforms to take actions. Target lock at minimum. Maybe target lock or battle stations, whichever the player prefers. I don't think really a scan is of much use, but that really wouldn't hurt or help. With those 2 changes to the rules, the platforms might conceivably get a shot or 2 at the Federation ships, but the truth is, even then, they're very minor at best, and they're certainly not worth 75 points. If you want to really make the Federation players' job a little difficult, I'd say double the number of platforms with those rule changes. That will certainly make things interesting for the Federation, but it certainly won't make the battle unwinnable for them. So that's a possibility. Now, just as it lays, it's still a good scenario because even though the platforms are useless, the cat and mouse game between the Dominion attack ships and the Federation for them lining up that single attack still works as a mission. It's still a fun scenario. So I'll rate it 3.5 stars and say it's worth playing, but I don't like the fact that Dominion is assessed 75 points for basically a useless attack value. So I would modify the attack values, I think. We'll have a good time with this one.
And now it's time for the Warp Core Breach Top 3. We count them up from 3 to 1, and then we toss it over to our contributors, so you get the best bang for your buck. This week's Top 3, Top Dominion Ships. When we first started thinking about Dominion ships, I kind of figured that Nick and I would have a little bit of overlap. And a tiny bit of spoilers, but this is one of the first lists in a long time where Nick and I have absolutely no overlap. And that is probably a good thing.
Well, one great way to keep a good relationship going is to have something new to bring to the table. You can't like all the same things, otherwise you'd get bored after a while.
Indeed. Now, I will say that the ships you have in your top 3 were definitely on my short list, and I think that most of the ships on my top 3 were at least under some consideration for you, so we have some crossover, it's just what actually made that final cut. So if we had, say, a top 10 list, I think there would be a lot of similarities, mostly because Dominion only has so many ships.
Well, let's just say top 5 or so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, if we had a top 5, I think you would have seen at least one ship the same.
Well, I'll kick it off with my number 3 pick, and that's the 2nd Division Cruiser, the 5165, whose ability says if you've got an attack ship in range 1, you get to roll an extra defense die. And hey, that's handy if you're doing a little fleet of those guys, but what really goes for me is it's got decent movement, better than the battleship. While a bit beefier, this one's a little more well-rounded. And the nice thing about it as well is it's a Jemadar ship, so you don't have to deal with any of the Dominion crew restrictions where, only playable on a Jemadar ship. This is a Jemadar ship. You can play them all. It's great. Yes, it only has a 90 forward, but it's Dominion, and you can add those awesome range 3 dorsals for 360.
Good points. It was on my short list. I do prefer the generic because I'd rather save 2 points than take a Dominion bug with me, unless I'm playing missions.
I go for stats. The ability is a throw-in. If I need the 2 points, I can drop it down.
Sure.
But hey, 2 points to bump it up without eating up a slot to gain that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like it, though. It's definitely a good ship.
Yeah, it's a cardless systems upgrade.
Yeah. So my number 3 is the Reklar. And this is the one that came out fairly recently, a few months ago now. But its ability is for an action, you get a battle station token, and each time you defend, you roll 1 extra defense die.
Can't argue with that point.
No, it doesn't have battle stations on the action bar, but it essentially does. And
it's a fast ship with decent stats and a 180.
Yeah, 180 arc. Now, granted, your turns are red, and I know you're going, well, red turns. That's a bummer. And yes, I agree. It is a bad thing, especially when you're up against ships that do have white turns. And I know this is what knocked Galler classes off of consideration for you is your movement dial. But, for me, functionally getting 4-2, 4-4 for 26 points, toss on Bohica here. You don't even need Gul Dukat at this
Throw him
point.
on your second ship.
Yeah. Toss Bohica on. Now you've got a little bit of quality with that battle station token. I can reasonably expect 3 hits, if not 4. I like my odds there.
Never tell me the odds.
I'm not going to die in 1 hit, so I like it. It's a solid ship. So that's why the Reklar made my list.
Well, my number 2 choice is the Ravlerst. Yes, it's a prize ship. Not everyone has it. It did come from the Dominion War, but I like the Breen. They're cool, they're fun to play, and it's a 3-2-4-4 ship, and it's got a 1 sensor echo as its action, and you don't need to be cloaked. And if you've ever listened to my Intermix or ever heard me go on and talking about how I play the game, I love maneuverability, and this just adds that. And it's got great maneuverability to begin with. It's got white hard turns, it's got the optional red come about, and it's big enough to support fighters. It's got that 4th hull. And energy dampener. Like, it's such a crazy ability that when it's on this ship, it doesn't cost a heck of a lot more, and it's the kind of thing that makes your opponents wet their pants. When you get it pulled off, they're just like, oh crap, you hit me, you're going to hit me again, and now I can do nothing about it. I'm just drifting. It's a great way to knock out Cloak. You remove it immediately, your other ships can target lock. So it's a good synergistic ship to bring in with some other bigger heavy hitters.
Yeah, the thing that kills the Breen for me is just that 3 attack dice, but I know you can do stuff about it now.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of them, which is a shame because I love what they did in the show. And I think that they just kind of missed the mark. It shows me that the designers just weren't a big fan of Deep Space Nine. Because if they were, the Breen would be a lot scarier in this game.
I'll give you that, but in the very least, the Ravlerst is half decent enough to be a good anti-fighter ship and to, put the crimp on the bigger ships for the sake of your other ships.
Sure. Yeah.
What slipped into your number 2 slot?
Yeah, so my number 2 is the Aldara, and this is the new reinforcement booster ship. But when a ship that started the activation phase in your forward arc moves, if you haven't moved yet, you can immediately change your move. And you can only use this ability once per round. That ability is so clutch. Especially
I call it the double take.
Yeah, it is a double take. If you're down to 1-on-1, it's amazing. I mean, folks that watched the reinforcement booster tournament that Natasha and I did, and I know I keep going back to that, but this ability is the thing that almost let the Aldara kill the bioship.
Especially with its limitation of a 90-degree forward.
Right. If you're up against a ship that has a 90 forward, you can get out of that, and you can get yourself into firing arcs because you've got the 180.
Absolutely.
So, yes, it's got the downside of only 4 attack dice and no battle station. Well, you can fix that with Gul Dukat.
Mm-hmm.
This is a ship that once you build to it, I think it's going to be even better. And that ability to change once you see what other people are doing is huge. So I love this. I love that named ability. I think that it can win games for you. And that's not something I say about a lot of named abilities on ships. So to have something that really can make a difference brings it up a lot in my book.
Agreed.
So I'm curious, Nick, what is it that took your number 1 spot?
Well, this is probably going to surprise a lot of people because I'm not someone who plays fighters that often. But I had to go with the first wave attack fighters. They are the mainstay powerhouse for the Dominion. 6 attack and multiple tokens so they can absorb huge hits. So there's no point in wasting the big fires on it. Plus you can disable an upgrade if you choose to equip it with them for an extra attack die. You can get up to 7 attack dice. That's pretty sweet. So it's got 6 dice base, survivability, and the exclusive Galler class phaser bank, so you can actually stretch to range 3. What more do you want?
That is a very good point. And fighters were my number 4. So, and on a different day, they probably would have been in my top 3. It really comes down to one's ability to fly them. And I think it's just lately my venue has seen so many cloaked mines come into play that I'm just not running Hidekis. I'm running more Fed fighters.
I hear you.
So it's a personal taste right now. I do love what Hidekis bring to the table. I just haven't been playing them.
Yeah, and I'm not generally a Dominion player by any stretch, despite owning them all. And that's why I took a look at this top 3 list in a bubble. So, the Travelers set forth a bubble that the only things that exist in this universe for right now are the Dominion ships. And that's how I came to this conclusion, was in a Dominion exclusive bubble.
Okay. If you want to talk about that bubble, I will grant you that... I don't know. Even in that bubble, I think that fighters might still be my number 4.
Fair enough. Well, on that note, what's your number 1?
My number 1 is the Coronac, but more than that, it's really the generic Keldon class. 5 attack dice, the 180 arc, and better maneuverability than the Galler class.
Having a crew, 2 tech, and a weapon slot doesn't hurt either. It's pretty good for a generic ship.
And do not underestimate what a 4 bank can do for you.
Oh, agreed. It's one of the few ships in the game that can do that.
Plus, having a 2 bank that's green actually will catch a lot of people out. So this is one of the few ships that only has 4 green moves, but they're 1 straight, 2 straight, and 2 bank. Normally it's 1 straight and bank and 2 straight. So
yeah, there are no 1 banks at all on this ship.
Right, it shifts the banks up a speed. So
it's the flip side of Voyager that doesn't get the 1 straight.
Yeah. So, it's interesting in that way. Would I love it more if it had a set of turns that wasn't red? Yeah, of course. But it is a very interesting ship. And the named ability can come into play. I've really only utilized it a couple of times. One of which was in Dominion War OP5 when you could attack orbital weapon platforms.
Right.
So I'm not entirely sure how much that counts, because when you're shooting at a stationary target, does it really count? I like to think that it does, but, that was a little something. But then I've also used it in, I want to say it was peak performance, because I could, I wanted to finish somebody off and then get in another little attack. But, functionally you want more attack dice before you're making 2 different ones and losing 2 attack from each.
Yeah.
Because, your tokens only affect 1 attack. So if you have a battle station token, you can only modify 1 set. And those are okay. But, for a generic Keldon to get 5 attack dice and 6 total durability, they're the most glass cannon ship that is out there. And that's okay with me. Like, I'm okay spending about 30 points on a 24-point ship, 5 attack, and toss in a somewhat decent captain. Maybe it's even an attack boosting captain like Golmaset to get me 6 attack dice. And I don't really care what happens.
Yeah, that works for me if you're flying at least 3 or 4 of them, because then you've got the swarm factor as far as like distraction and keeping things back and forth, and you're weaving your ships around the table, you can get a lot of good coverage. But I wouldn't want these as like my main ship or main ships, because like you said, they're kind of made of glass. They'd shatter too easily, especially with the generics being only 2 shields. Hulls of 4, that's only 6 durability. You know, 1 good shot from a reasonably sized ship and you're done for.
Yeah, but if you have 4 of them on the table or 3 of them on the table, your opponent doesn't really know what to shoot first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they're better. So.
Especially if you're evenly built, where it won't really matter which of them you lose first, because they can all take up the slack. Yeah. That's where 4 is better than 3, because if you have 3, once you get down to 2, you've lost a lot. It's kind of like fighters losing a couple tokens. Once they get down to a certain point, they're really not that useful anymore.
Well, I remember back when, on the State of the Federation days, we did a Keldon v. Vorcha challenge. I ended up winning because I had 4 Keldons against 3 Vorchas, but I just found that list, and the point breakdown on my Keldons was 35, 29, 29, 27.
Well, that's the thing about when you piss off the Klingons. They will come back, and in greater numbers.
Yes. But I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because we will rebuild.
If you build it, they will come. And I wanted to throw out a bit of an honorable mention to Terok Nor, the Dominion side of the Deep Space Nine, or the original source, technically, considering it started out as Cardassian. It started out as Terok Nor. 5088, 360 firing at range 3 with 4 dice. And while a lot of people have noticed that as a ship playing in a tournament or even casual, it doesn't seem to last long. But short of shenanigans buffing it up on the Fed side, the Dominion side can be a great distraction. Just put a couple upgrades on it, just have it there. And it's great to house support abilities. Like if you're playing mixed, you can throw things on like the Denatra or the Tyrell or other things like that, because the ship is so big, the station is so big, that having other ships stay within range 1 is so easy. So it's a great platform for support.
Yeah, I like it. I actually ran Terok Nor in A Matter of Honor, which, if you remember that mission, you will understand how suicidal that was.
Yeah.
Terok Nor functioned as a vacuum cleaner.
Was it your Roomba?
Yeah. Yes, folks, that was intentional. Yes, I had a lot of fun doing it. But you know what? Sometimes you just have to play stuff. And Terok Nor is one of those ships that is a lot of fun to try out. It's a lot of ship. While it is not fast, while it is not sturdy, it is fun while it lasts, and it does present a very tantalizing target that your opponent has to decide how to deal with at some point. Plus, it can stand still, and that is a very valuable commodity.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, let's toss it over to our contributors and see what they think on their Dominion ships. I don't know if anybody can bring anything new to the party, since we talked about 7 different ships, but I'm sure somebody will think of something new. So we'll hear from them, and then we'll be back with our closing thoughts.
Hello, Warp Core Breach listeners. This is Bane of Borg. My top Dominion ship is actually not a ship, but a squadron. The Deki-class fighter squadron that the Dominion use is what I like to use in my OP events because of the maneuverability. Most of the other Dominion ships I've found for myself and for our venue actually are just not maneuverable enough to hang with Borg, Scimitars, Federation builds. That they have firepower, they have some sustainability, but you can outflank them, get around them a lot easier than you can some of the other types of fleets. These fighters, along with their Federation counterparts, yes, they're a little bit weak against mines, but as long as you can avoid mines, they give you a decent amount of attack, which is usually starts off with 6. With these Dominion fighters, you can attach the upgrade, the Gaylor class phaser banks, which takes the range out to 3 with the +1 up to max of 6. I think that packs a punch. It gives you maneuverability to help flank your enemy, as well as it can hang long in a firefight, and that's particularly useful against Borg. So I guess in summary, that's my favorite Dominion ship, quote unquote, which is a squadron. Thanks for listening. This is Bane of Borg, signing off.
Hi, this is Dave Griffin. My top Dominion ship is the Reklar. That seems like a strange choice since it's one of a lot of different Galers, but it's a reasonably tough ship. It's got good firing arcs, and it has the capability of having a battle station, and you even get a defense bonus along with it. I'm not much of a Dominion player on average, but I like that ship, and the others have too great a deficiency. The battleship, for instance, really needs some kind of maneuver upgrade, and the battle cruiser, I would say, is a close second because it has more firepower, but I like those Cardassian ships better overall, I think. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Steve Stott from Ready to Play Gaming in Columbia, South Carolina. When you talk about your favorite Dominion ship, for me, I am a fan of the Breen, so the Gore Portis is the ship I go with. It's a medium price ship at 26 SP, has 4 weapon slot and a crew slot, but the text is what really gets me, because with this ship, you don't have to remove your target lock when firing your secondary weapons, your torpedoes. That makes it the perfect torpedo boat because all you have to do is disable that torpedo, fire it, and guess what? You have the target lock to spend for the rerolls. That's the thing that really fixes the broken aspect of torpedoes, but the Gore Portis does the job for that. Plus, slap an energy dissipator on there, plus with the torpedo firing, and I think you've got send some big ships home crying because they don't have their shields and they have that just automatic forward 1 movement. So the Gore Portis definitely, the Breen, as you saw on the show, definitely showed what it looked like to ruin your day. This is Steve Stott from Ready to Play Gaming, and I hope you all have great dice rolls. Take care. Bye.
Hi everyone. This is Dave from the Faction Report, and I'd say that my favourite Dominion ship is the Reklar. For a long time it was the Coronac, but I think the Reklar just edges it out a little bit because it has that extra little bit of durability from the extra shield, and the ship action where you can take a battle stations token and you get +1 defense dice, I think is a little bit better than the ship action on the Coronac, which kind of forces you in to taking a scan token. Yes, the Coronac's got 5 primary weapon value, whereas the Reklar only has 4, but the Reklar gets access to that slightly cheaper Aldara version of the ARF weapons array, which I think is really useful. I like the Galor class ships anyway. I think 4144 as a slash line is pretty good. They have that 8 durability, which means you're unlikely to be the victim of an alpha strike, and the 4 attack dice, which means you're going to cause some damage, particularly with the battle stations upgrade. As an upgrade pack, I think it's pretty good too, but just for the ship itself, I'd say that the Reklar was my favourite Dominion ship. Thanks for listening.
With Thanksgiving and Christmas approaching, a lot of minds are shifting to different things. Some people, it's to buying gifts for their friends and their family. Others, it's to social and family gatherings. And still others, it's heavy workload coming up, depending on what industry you work in. With Star Trek Attack Wing, we've got more waves coming. We've got the Xindi weapon ship coming out. We've got a lot of good and exciting things coming up. So with that in mind, maybe you can start someone off. Pick up a Star Trek Attack Wing starter kit and give it to someone. Breed some new players. Grow your community. Give someone the gift of fun.
And more than that, take your time to sit down and play a game with them.
Exactly.
Because it's not exactly an easy game to learn straight out of the box.
On your own.
Unless you're really familiar with rules and board games and stuff like that. But if you have someone teach it to you, you're more likely to keep playing it. You're more likely to enjoy it. Plus, if you're the one teaching, you get a game out of it.
That, and they're more likely to want to play with you.
Yeah.
And hey, that's a great way to gift them the game. Like, just someone's like, hey, do you want to get together, play a game sometime? You bring just the raw starter kit, you show up, and you teach them the game, and you leave it with them. Just say, Merry Christmas, Happy Thanksgiving, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, or whatever celebratory reason you have for this season, or they have. A great way to make a new friend, potentially, depending on how generous you might be.
You know, there's so many different things you can do.
And booster packs make great stocking stuffers. I'm just saying.
So true. So very true.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there. This is in the spirit of giving. That's the best thing you can ever do, is take your time to be with someone, talk to somebody, teach them the game, teach them a game. Not to get too philosophical, but to take a moment. The one thing we all have equally in this life is time. And so how you spend your time is what matters. And when you spend time doing something with someone else, you're giving them
the greatest gift of all.
Yeah. You're giving them the best gift you possibly could. So.
What's more precious than your time?
Not a thing.
That's right.
So, not to get down, that's all exciting. But speaking of time, we are out of time today. So, thank you folks so much for listening. We will be back in 2 weeks with episode 19.
Breach in 10.
And we hope that you will join
9,
us then.
Joel and True
8
is coming to
7,
this game in 6, May of next
5,
year. All right.
4,
so until next time.
This is Nick.
3,
and this is David.
2,
Ejecting the core.
Warp core ejected.
Warp Core Breach is produced by Nick Norris and David Montgomery, with additional content from our contributors. Our computer is voiced by Corinne Donnelly.
Warp Core Breach is not endorsed, sponsored, or affiliated with CBS Studios Incorporated or the Star Trek franchise. All Star Trek trademarks and logos are owned by CBS Studios Incorporated.
All sound files are used under Creative Commons 3.0 by attribution. For specifics, please visit our Facebook page by searching Warp Core Breach Podcast. If you want to contribute to the show, let us know on the Facebook page, or you can email us at warpcorebreachpodcast@gmail.com.
You are on a ship that has exploded.
Boom! There's the kaboom!